While we're on white ball cricket, Geoff, we had a conversation maybe 2 or 3 weeks ago about the Australian men's team and missing chunks of their international program in the West Indies and Bangladesh, 7 players all up. But they're copping some backlash, which I wasn't necessarily anticipating. So Shane Warne's gone after them, saying that, if they're willing to miss this and put the IPL ahead of international fair, then maybe that could come back to bite them at the selection table. I mean, the fact that Shane Warne's saying that of all people, given the way that he made money during his playing career, but that's neither here nor there. Aaron Finch is on the record saying that he doesn't want the Australian players to go back to the IPL, which kind of goes against what we said, and I think Malcolm Knox touched on this as well, that maybe the IPL could be a good setup for the World Cup if it does end up getting played in the UAE. It's not confirmed it will be in the UAE, but we're assuming it probably will be. There's no right answer here, of course. They're all sort of imperfect solutions, but I don't think it's reasonable to say that those 7 Australian players, if you don't go to the Caribbean and Bangladesh, that you might miss an Ashes test or something like that. That's not what's being said, but the subtext to it all, right?
It feels like posturing, like saying, "Oh well, if you're not going to prioritise the pride of the
Canary
black
yellow
baseball cap of the T20 team ahead of your personal interests." Okay, well, the tours coming up and the IPL, they're at different times. I don't know if anybody's explained the process of time or the passage of time to SKW, but one of them's now, and so after having done a whole lot of stressful and difficult things, having a break could be important rather than doing something now, and then being refreshed and feeling good in order to do something else later instead of doing something now and then having a break later before the tournament where you don't want to be having a break. And maybe before the tournament where you're going to, for instance, be playing T20 cricket at a high standard in the UAE, maybe you could prepare for that by playing T20 cricket at a high standard in the UAE. Maybe that would be useful. I don't know. Traditionally, some teams have done that. They played a similar kind of game before the game that they want to be good at. I've heard about it being done.
Well handled there. There's some other travel stuff floating about as well. Some reports yesterday that the England squad coming to Australia might not be able to bring their family for the Ashes. And, I mean, understandably, people kicked off about this. Not least Michael Vaughan, who went as far as to say that they shouldn't come if they're not allowed to bring their family. Now, CA were pretty quick to hose this down, saying that, quote from a spokesperson here, "It's only June. England aren't due to arrive till November. We'll be going through the same process as we did with India." So I suppose they're hinting there that they'll find a way through with the Australian government. But yeah, the whole thing, Geoff, I mean, our colleagues in the press have no idea how they're going to make it into Australia. I mean, I'm lucky that I can get there having an Australian passport, but not everyone has that privilege at this stage. I'm sure there'll be a version of hotel quarantine for everybody, but that's just one segment. The Ashes spectacle, I suppose, does usually require a lot of people coming from England, not just players. So, and I suppose, Geoff, it just reinforces what a shambles the vaccination rollout's been in Australia, that we can't have a more mature conversation around this, even though it is 6 months away, or maybe not quite 6 now, 4 or 5 months away. That in all probability, there will need to be some pretty harsh conditions put upon those coming into the country if they can get in there at all.
There's been a huge amount of vagueness. I think it was Dan Brettig who made the observation that Australian government spokespersons keep saying we'll sort things out later in the year or in the later months of the year, and he said we're running out of later months in the year. There aren't that many later months left. The way things are going at the moment with, I don't know where we're up to on the full double dose vaccination numbers, but I think it's still low single figures in terms of a national percentage. It's a pretty dire situation for the prospects of getting a massive travelling caravan of people into Australia, because aside from, even if you put together an ECB retinue and press, you're talking several hundred people. Add in travelling fans and you're talking tens of thousands probably over the course of the series. There's an ecological environmental discussion to be had about that, about the feasibility of tens of thousands of people travelling around the world to watch teams play sport, but that has been something that's happened in all sports for decades, and that's the expectation that people will be able to do that. They probably won't be able to do that. All of the the usual stuff about the great atmosphere of Ashes tests, so much of that relies on England turning up, England supporters turning up. You don't sell out every Ashes test if it's only home supporters. So it would be interesting to see how the crowds are, whether those grounds do fill up if there are gaps of 20,000 odd left in the seats where the travelling supporters don't show. So yeah, there are a lot of ramifications there.
Yeah, and I suppose from a player's perspective, they won't mind too much if the England press pack aren't there. I don't know. I'm
Or
sure
the
that
fans.
Yeah, I mean that won't be a factor. I don't suppose, but it's just part of it that it'll be a knock-on benefit for the home side in the scenario where it's just the England team and maybe some support staff, and that's not just about quarantine. That's not just about vaccination. That's about the insufficient national quarantine set up at the moment. So it rolls on, as it does.
And maybe we don't have to hear the Barmy Army do that one song just all day again, and then have everybody talk up how great they are because they're so creative, because they sing songs. And like they have like 3 songs.
Oh, Geoff,
there's not a lot of creativity.
Geoff, we have got England playing Germany at Wembley in the final 16 of the Euros in a couple of days, and I can guarantee we're going to hear 2 World Wars, 1 World Cup, and my granddad killed your granddad, and all that fucking bullshit will go on and on and on forever.